Speaking like a CEO isn't about pounding your fist on the table and commanding everyone's attention. It's about speaking with clarity, enthusiasm, and confidence to draw people into what you're saying. And of course, you need to do all of this while making a connection to your audience. This is what you need to do to speak like a CEO in meetings, and in this video, I'm going to show you how. The first thing you need to do is to keep your communication simple. This will help you achieve the clarity component of speaking like a CEO. Because the primary aim of communication is to ensure everybody understands your message, to ensure there is no interference that gets in the way of your audience understanding what you're saying. And interference is the key word that you need to remember here. Sharing too much information can be an interference. Using long-winded sentences can be an interference. Using unnecessarily complicated vocabulary can be an interference. And these interferences will convolute your communication. They will distract people from your main message, and they will drive you far away from sounding like a CEO. Less is more when it comes to good communication, so try to use simple, plain language. Only use technical jargon if you know your audience is going to understand what you're saying. Don't communicate too much information at the one time. Stick to the rule of threes because the human mind thinks in threes. Be direct and say what you want. Don't beat around the bush using indirect or passive communication. And don't try to tell your audience everything at once. Pace your communication and allow time for them to ask you questions and for you to answer those questions. The second thing you need to do to speak like a CEO is to speak with enthusiasm. Think of every leader that you admire. Now think of why you admire them. And I bet the majority of your answers will be something along the lines of, they are so charismatic, they are so energetic. Well, it's this energy and it's this charisma that they project through their communication that draws you to them. It's this energy and charisma that you identify in the way they communicate that makes you think they are such a great leader. Enthusiastic people bring positivity, energy, and motivation to everyone around them. Their vibe is contagious and it touches the audience or you on a deep subconscious level, making you want to join in and be part of the fun. For leaders and CEOs, enthusiasm can help you to convince people of big and potentially risky ideas, get people working on tasks that might be a little bit mundane, encourage people to work towards the goals that you have described, and make people feel that the impossible is possible. If enthusiasm is so powerful, then why don't more CEOs and leaders speak like this? Well, because it's harder to achieve. You need to use positive and motivating language and vocabulary. You need to explain steps and goals in a way that sounds achievable. And you need to use body language and facial expressions that are enthusiastic. So concretely, what does all of this mean? How can you speak with enthusiasm? Well, I'm going to share with you a number of steps that you can put into action right now. Use repetition when you communicate. For example, your key message or a key phrase or even a key word in your communication. Make sure you repeat that for emphasis. Use examples that your audience can relate to. For example, you could talk about a previous project that failed, but your idea could make that project a success. Share stories that touch people on an emotional level. For example, you could share a story of somebody overcoming an obstacle. Put urgency in your communication. And for this, you could reveal the consequences of not taking action. And when it comes to your voice, it's really important that you vary your volume as well as your pitch, as well as your speed. This together will help you sound more enthusiastic as you speak. Use facial expressions, gestures, and movements to emphasize what you're saying. All of this will help you infuse emotion and to infuse enthusiasm in your communication, and that is what's going to make your communication so compelling. The third thing you need to do to speak like a CEO is to communicate the why. You see, it's human condition to want to know the why. Why should people listen to what you're saying? Why should people act on your message? This is what your audience will be asking themselves in the meeting, so you need to provide an adequate answer to keep them satisfied. And to be honest, if you can't think of a why, then maybe your ideas need to be worked on a little more before you communicate them in the meeting. The why gives your audience a reason to act. It motivates them to help you and to follow your lead. For example, if you ask someone in your team to take on some extra work without giving them a reason why, their initial reaction is probably going to be pushback. They might even refuse to take on this extra work because you haven't given them a good enough reason to act. Many people neglect to include the why in their communications and especially in their delegation requests. They don't make time for it, and sometimes they feel, well, it's just self-evident. But hopefully, after watching this video, you will make the extra effort in your communication to give your audience the why, especially when you are asking them to take action on something. An effective way to communicate the why is to include the word because in your communication. For example, I'd like you to take on this extra project because our client has just threatened to use another supplier. Or, I think we should give free samples of our product to our clients because you really need to experience using it to know how great it is. The fourth thing you need to do to speak like a CEO is to relate your message to your audience, meaning your message needs to connect with your audience. It needs to speak to them. It needs to speak to their needs, their wants, their fears, and their desires. When your message speaks to your audience, it drives through their barriers of hesitancy, uncertainty, and fear. It opens them up to listen to you and hopefully persuades and convinces them. Relating your message to your audience is best done through stories and examples. That's why earlier in this video, I recommended that you use stories and examples in your communication, especially ones that your audience can relate to. So talk about things that your audience have experienced, situations they have encountered, and emotions that they have felt. For example, in the last point, I said, I think we need to give away free samples of our product because people need to experience using it to know how great it is. I could follow on and relate my message to my audience by saying something like this. Here's a situation you can all relate to. On Saturday morning, when you're doing your grocery shopping at the butcher and they have free samples of their sausages out the front of their store, you take one, you taste it, and you see how wonderful it is. Doesn't that make you want to buy some of their sausages, take them home, and cook them for yourself? And just like that, I have connected with my audience on an emotional level and used an experience or situation that they have encountered themselves. And hopefully this will have opened them up to listen to my idea more and hopefully persuaded them and convinced them of my idea too. Relating your message to your audience requires you to know your audience. Either you're already familiar with them or you need to do some research to find out who they are. Think of how you want your audience to feel when you share your idea. Then come up with a story or an example that will help you to communicate that feeling and to connect with them on an emotional level. The fifth thing you need to do to speak like a CEO in meetings is to be brave and invite input. Meetings aren't one-way conversations. It's not about you as the CEO sharing your ideas and no one else in the room speaking at all. It's a two-way conversation between you as the CEO and your team as well, and you want them to share their thoughts and their perspectives as well on your ideas. This helps people get more involved in meetings rather than sit there passively. It also helps you uncover the best ideas because people in your team, they might add on to an idea that you shared, or they might share a concern that you've overlooked. Rather than leading in a vacuum, I encourage you to open yourself up and your ideas up for input from your team. So how do you do this? After you've shared your idea, simply say, I'd like to hear what you all think. Then wait 8 to 10 seconds as people organize their thoughts and they work up the courage to respond. If people are reluctant to respond, which often does happen in group meetings, then call on somebody specific. Once the ball starts rolling, more and more people will join in and respond to your idea. Your charisma as a leader will play a huge part in you speaking like a CEO in meetings. If you want to know how to become a more charismatic leader or how to use charismatic body language as a leader, then you need to watch these 2 videos up here. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you did like it, please hit the like button below. Subscribe to my channel for more content like this every week that will help you as an emerging leader to advance in your career. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.